first of all, should we just go around and have you all introduce yourselves? So if you could just tell us your name, what you farm, where you farm, and your role at AHDB as well. So Tom, do you want to go first?
Yep, can do. I'm Tom Clark. I'm an arable farmer from Cambridgeshire, where I grow cereals, oilseeds, also root crops, and some maize and things like that for anaerobic digestion.
So I'm Colin Bateman. I'm a sheep and beef farmer in the hills above Kendal, Cumbria, obviously, and I'm sector chair at HDB for beef and lamb.
I'm Mike Sheldon. I chair the Pork Sector Council for HDB. I've been involved in the pork industry all my career, working for genetics companies and having a farm of my own.
I'm Lyndon Edwards. I'm an organic dairy farmer from Chepstow, farming on the banks of the River Severn and Wye. And I also am chairman of the HDB Dairy Sector Council.
Brill. So does one of you want to start off and just give us a little bit of background on how you came to decide that the increase was needed?
Well, I'll say a few words if that's all right. I've been around at HDB for quite a while, and I'm conscious that what we've been doing over the last few years is getting leaner and more efficient and more effective and more selective about what we do, establishing our priorities on where we're going to deliver the most value and concentrating on those. And I think that's been successful. But there comes a point where, as we look into the future, we really believe that with an increase in levy, we will be able to deliver even more value for levy payers. And that's the purpose of the current proposal.
Excellent. So, I mean, do you just want to talk us through a little bit about the priorities for your sector then, Mike, for the pork sector, and what this increase in the levy will do for you?
So we went through the process last year of consulting with all our levy payers about what their priorities were, and we came up with three very clear pillars. Our work in building the domestic market for pork in the UK, our work to drive exports all the way around the world for pork, and our work on the reputation of the pork sector, which we know is something which is very important to our levy payers, whether it's about pork as part of a healthy diet, or whether it's pork's environmental credentials or animal health and welfare, matters like that. And that's an area which is very important to our levy payers. So that's what we concentrate on, and that's where we believe we deliver the most value for our levy payers.
And Lyndon, do you want to take us through some of the priorities for the dairy sector?
No problem. Well, a few years ago, we started doing consumer marketing campaigns. Most people will have seen the We Eat Balanced and Eat Like a Lioness campaigns in the last year. And I think they're doing a great job. But they're not targeting all of the people that we need to target. So I think that some of the extra levy money could be used to better target particularly the future consumers, the 16 up to 25-year-olds who are sort of coming to the end of education and going off and to colleges, universities, etc. And the anti-meat and dairy lobby is very, very good at targeting those people. So when we looked at some Google Analytics, that demographic is actually turning away from meat and dairy at a very high rate. So they're the people we need to balance the message to actually keep them on board, because that's our future consumers.
Yeah, so I mean, just to build on what Mike said, I've sort of been in AHDB for quite a long time, and the spending power of the levy has been eroded, especially recently in inflation. So we've had to go through a period of becoming leaner, but really there's an awful lot of opportunity for British farmers to basically do better. So what I want to say to people who pay the levy is, this is actually an investment in the future of the industry. And with more investment, that means we can do more. And that means we can build a stronger industry, which means, we can become a lot more sustainable in the future. So levy payers asked us to really concentrate on three areas. Marketing. So we do an awful lot of domestic marketing. It's mainly about building the sort of reputation of red meat and sort of trying to drive attitudinal change. So it's very long term. What we'd like to do is we'd like to become more focused in the marketing on Gen Z. start educating children. We already do education in primary, but what we'd like to do is expand that through to secondary. And then so it takes the whole life journey of the consumer along with us. Exports was another big ask. The main focus that we'd like to do in the future more of is about opening some of those high value new markets, especially in the East, but also developed markets across the Middle East for British lamb and ultimately beef into the Far East. We'd like to put more people in those markets, whether they're trade counsellors, veterinary advisors, and also do a lot more in terms of international promotion. It's really important, you know, I've just come back from Anuga in Germany, which is a very, very big trade show, and there's a huge demand for our product across the world. And it is very much a people-based business. So with the right people, that's where we'd like to spend the extra resource. The other work they asked us to do was work on promoting the reputation of British meat. So that's about gathering and collating evidence, which we can put in front of policymakers and consumers to ensure that the choices that people make are actually based on robust science and evidence. It's really important that we do this kind of work because that underpins all the marketing and all the promotional activity that we do on exports, which actually enables us to get higher prices for our products. And the really unique thing about what AHDB does is it operates in areas where farmers can't actually do this work themselves, because we can bring people together using our independence. So it's crucial that we have the resource in these areas because we have to invest. We have to start investing in our own future now because we can't leave it to anybody else to do it because it's just not going to happen otherwise.
Tom, moving away from livestock, I suspect your priorities will be a little bit different. Do you want to take us through the cereals and oilseeds?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Yeah, no, I guess I am a little bit the odd one out here, being the only arable crop sector. And what we do in the AHDB is quite different. It's all largely pre-farm gate. So we do a little bit of export work, and we actually just signed a wheat agreement with Morocco last week. But actually, what we're mainly focused on is helping the farm businesses, the arable farming businesses, do better. And we do that through our research on the recommended list varieties and product testing, so fungicide trials, but also other independent research, market information, so that farmers have got all the information they need in a sort of digestible form, so they can understand what prices are likely to be, both for their inputs and for their produce as well. When fertilizer prices spiked, we did a really good bit of analysis about actually where was the optimum amount of inputs they could put on with these new prices and what the yield penalty was. And actually, loads of farmers have said that's really helped their businesses as well. We also work across the supply chain. So some of our levy payers are processors and the merchants as well, and we do work on monitoring contaminants in the supply chain, and we also do knowledge exchange. So we run a whole network of strategic and monitor farms across the country, and actually Cereals and Oilseeds covers all 4 UK countries. So we're Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England, and we have monitor farms and strategic farms spread out throughout the country, and those are real farmers trying new things, applying the research that we've got funded to see how it makes a difference, bringing in farmers from all around their area to look at specific topics about how their businesses run. A lot of those are also attached to arable business groups where we have benchmarking across. People can come to those meetings and really compare how they stack up and what they're doing differently. It's a really open, honest conversation about how their businesses can do better. But like all the others have said, actually, we've had a flat budget in Cereals and Oilseeds to do that work, which is stuff that wouldn't get done by farmers if we didn't exist, for farmers if we didn't exist. That budget's been 10 or 11 million pounds a year since 2012. And as you can imagine, our costs have not stayed still, stayed flat, as like our budget has. And so we have been able to do less and less and less of what we really need to do over the last 12 years. And actually now, as Colin said, more than ever, the challenges and the operating environment we're facing really require, I think farmers are going to need us to do more, make it more relevant, make it more practical, and really demonstrate how what we do can make a real difference to their businesses. And to do more, we need more investment to make that happen. And that is why we're asking for a modest 12p per tonne levy rise for the cereals and oilseed sector.
And, a few of you mentioned there about AHDB becoming leaner, and I suppose the changes that have happened, particularly over the past couple of years. Do you believe now that AHDB is in a much better position with where they are now in terms of, I suppose, efficiency and where money's being spent?
Yes, I think is the short answer. I think we are now in pretty good shape, actually, and there's a good understanding throughout the organisation of where our costs lie and how they behave. But of course, it doesn't end. It doesn't end. You always have to keep seeking ways to become more efficient, more effective, leaner, more productive, just like all our levy payers are having to do with their businesses every day. We don't escape that, and we're not afraid of it. We'll carry on getting more efficient.
No, I think actually we do need to be efficient in cost, but to me, and what the focus of my sector council is going to be for the next 3-4 years is absolutely making sure that we're delivering, however much it costs us to produce, that we give more value back to the levy payer. That actually being able to demonstrate that for every pound they pay in levy, we can give them, 2, 3, 4 pounds back to their businesses. So yes, we need to be efficient and lower our costs, but with more resources, we can do more and provide more for their businesses too.
And I think one of the things that came across, when you were doing this research was, farmers saying, well, actually, we don't 100% know, what AHDB does, what it's delivering for us. How are you, going to show them what you do and why it's worth it?
I think this is an area that AHDB haven't done well enough in the past. So to put our hands up, look, it's a great secret. A lot of our farmer levy payers don't understand all of the things that we do. They can see a marketing advert on the television. They don't know it's done by HDB. They can look at when they're buying genetics in the catalogues. They don't know all that is backed up by HDB as a completely independent source of information. Similarly, exports. 1.2 billion litres worth of milk is exported from the UK. AHDB are fairly instrumental in helping and promoting new markets and working with processors to open new markets. And for every litre of milk that goes abroad, extra litre of milk, that's 1 litre less milk in the UK. And it's all about supply and demand. And opening the export markets to an extra percentage of our milk is a good way to put supply and demand back into the balance it needs to be. That's just a few ways. And obviously, when farmers hear this, so I will be on a show stand and a farmer can come up to me and say, what do you do for my levy money? And by the time I sit down and tell them, they are more than happy. I've done 2 big shows recently. I've done the Telford Dairy Show and the Shetland Mallet Dairy Show. And I have not had a single farmer on the stand talking to me who didn't agree when they knew what we were doing that we shouldn't have an increase in levy.
Yeah, and I'm just going to ask sort of the same for you, Colin, because I think if I'm right, the beef and lamb sector, it was difficult to kind of for you to know who your levy payers were and vice versa. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I mean, look, there's some restrictions because of GDPR, which means that, we don't always know who our levy payers are unless they give us permission to know who they are, which, is if you take that from a farmer's perspective, it just sounds like total gibberish because they see themselves as our customers. But, the reality is that if you take, for instance, the lamb sector, it's very focused on exports. So everybody understands the value of exports. What doesn't quite get communicated through to them is actually the value that AHDB contributes to their exports. So if they go and sell lamb at the market, the moment they're sort of in that £105 to £110 range, about £35 of that lamb comes from exporting. And that doesn't mean that it's the whole lamb, it's parts of the lamb, it's high value, some of it's about 5th quarter products. Now, AHDB facilitates that trade in exports. It doesn't mean that it won't happen without AHDB, but let's be real, there's a lot of people in the world who would love to come and nick our markets. So it's a constant competition. So we've got to be building businesses out in new markets. We've got to be finding better ways of supporting exporters in existing markets. The reality is that if that work wasn't done by AHDB, people would see that there would be a reduction in the value of those exports. And ultimately, that would reduce the value of their product. So what they see at the moment is they see there's my levy being taken off, but they don't actually see another column which says there's the value that that levy has generated. And in exports at the moment, the return on investment is roughly about well, it's just under 12, it's 11.9. So for every pound that the farmer pays, there's a £12 that comes back into the industry. That is a super return on investment. And the businesses that are close to us, the big exporters, the big meat firms, they pay relatively, because they're big businesses, they pay a lot of levy. So they're quite close to AHDB. They do see that value. Farmers don't always see the value because they're further away from AHDB. And I am absolutely passionate about communicating better to farmers what we do. It's something we do have to get better about, because I think once people understand the full picture of what we actually do, honestly, I think they'd be blown away by it. I think they'd be amazed. It would be very hard to find somebody who said that's not good value for money. And I can say that with credibility because I actually came to AHDB from the hill farming sector in Cumbria. And people actually said to me, you need to go to AHDB because we have no idea what happens with our money. The fact that I've ended up as sector chair is just a complete accident. However, I'm really passionate about explaining to them what does happen with their money, because the value that's delivered back to the industry, I think, is quite extraordinary. And just to go back to the point that I've made before, it's things farmers can't do themselves. So they can't do exports, they can't do marketing themselves on the scale that we do it, and the reputation work. They're just all things that farmers just can't do.
I would say that as well in the arable sector, even though that we are probably more visible because we're involved, giving advice about people's actual businesses. There's so much work that the AHB does that is still not visible to farmers. So the recommended lists, a lot of people don't realize that information is all funded through the AHDB. And all the breeders and all the people who are trying to sell you seed, they put out their own version of the recommended list for all that data. So you can compare varieties against each other is provided by the AHDB. All the everyone like me, I have an agronomist and I rely on my agronomist for advice. And people say, oh, I just asked my agronomist. Where do you think the agronomist gets loads of their information from? And that's from the AHDB. We do running the fungicide trials, the independent research that we do. That informs the agronomist who then inform you. A lot of the research is done by other organizations like NIAB, ADAS. That is again funded largely. A lot of it is from the AHDB, and that information is then taken and they add a twist to it or repackage it and then charge for that. And farmers are quite happy to pay for that scientific advice from those commercial organisations, not realising that they've already paid for a portion of it through their levy, and in some ways they could be being asked to pay twice. Now, I want to make sure and make it much clearer what the levy has paid for in those bits of advice that we get, because you're right, we're not very good as an organization at really shouting about what we do. And I think we've seen the consequences of not making sure levy payers are aware of the full range of what we do.
I think as an organization we have to start becoming proud of what we do and actually not being embarrassed about taking the levy off farmers. And actually, sorry, I should say in my sector, farmers and processors. But we've got to start being proud about what we do and actually talking positively to people about that return. And I think the fact that we had the Shape the Future consultation and we actually listened to their views, to my mind, that's the first, or to my knowledge, that's the first time that a levy board has actually gone out and consulted the people that actually pay it. What is it that you want to see prioritised? So, that is something I think we can be proud of. We just need to go out and shout about it more.
And Colin, I know Tom was saying there about data, but I'm aware that there's some changes coming in terms of your relationship with LAA and the data that you get from the marts. Does that concern you about the value that people are getting for their money for the beef and lamb sector?
Look, I mean, LAA obviously is an independent business, and for a long time we have processed their data for them, which we've charged for. And they've made a decision, that they want to go in a different direction because, they believe that their data's got extra value other than just making it available to the farming community. So I mean, that's a commercial decision which they've made. What we've tried to do is we've tried to support them in that decision and, enable a sort of smooth transition. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's their decision to make, not ours. So, although people see us as, an organization that sort of has the best interests of the industry, we don't actually control lots of parts of the industry. So what they want to do themselves, that's a decision for them to make.
And obviously, we had the ballots for horticulture and potato sector a few years ago now, didn't we? I mean, has that changed how you're working, how you're thinking? I don't know, Tom, you probably have the biggest overlap in terms of levy payers with horticulture and potatoes. Has that changed the way that you're thinking?
That's why the reason I got involved, actually, I voted to keep the levy as a potato grower. And I was really disappointed that we didn't get it. Now, I know a lot of people didn't vote yes, but I can see from my own business that we need these activities to be done. And I think, the story with potatoes without a levy board is not a happy one all the way through, And recently we were talking to growers in Scotland, potato growers in Scotland, who were trying to raise £6,000, just £6,000 from growers in order to do a little bit of work about seed potatoes. They couldn't get anyone to pay. So that work wasn't done. Now, in the old days, the AHDB would have stumped that up without any question. £6,000 was not a lot of money, but because everybody would have benefited from that work, and only some people would have paid for it, no one would pay for it. And that is the benefit of having a statutory levy. And that's, as I say, it's why I got involved in this. I believe the role we can play with an industry which is already fragmented and already under the cosh from the markets, the supply chain, suppliers. We have so little economic power that we need someone on our side. And the only way we can get it's fair is for everyone to pay a levy and then us to be held accountable to those levy payers. And I think in the past, the organisation has been more concerned about its remit from government and actually what the change is, why we're all four of us are involved and all our sector councils are packed full of levy payers, is so that we can make sure the organisation is catering to the levy payers' needs. And our focus is the levy payer from now on. And I think in some ways, horticulture and potato, the result has been a good lesson for us to learn. And I hope in the future, actually, we can bring in and other sectors will want us to do work for them too. But we'll see. We've got to get this levy rise through first.
I think if I can come in there, I think Tom's right. I think the horticulture and potato ballots were they haven't given benefits to the other sectors actually, because it has resulted in an organisation which has changed its attitude and changed how it thinks. And Tom is right to identify it. The front and centre of everything we do now is we are serving the levy payers. That is the first thing that we do, is serve the levy payers. And of course, we in serving the levy payers, we also have interaction with all sorts of other people, like government, like research institutes, like people overseas. But in the end, it all comes back to, does this generate value for the levy payer? And if it doesn't, we won't do it.
And I know when I spoke to some of the people involved in getting the ballots, there was a feeling, I think particularly in the potato sector, of that difference between the bigger growers and the smaller growers. And I know the pork sector is probably quite divided in terms of the difference between those commercial pig farmers and, the smaller kind of independent ones, if that's the right way to phrase it. I mean, how are you balancing, the interests of the big guys and those smaller family farms?
But I mean, it is a challenge. But the reality is actually, when we carried out that the Shape the Future ballot last year, one of the ways we looked at the data was there a difference in message between the processors on the one hand and the producers on the other, or large on the one hand, small on the other? There wasn't that much difference. In actual fact, the needs were shared across the industry. Across all sectors, all parts of the pork sector, where large or small producer or processor. And one of the things we've been doing is in talking about our priorities, I feel actually the interests have got closer. So the understanding of the interest has got closer, not wider. So obviously there's always going to be because there's a price relationship, there's always going to be some tension between producer and processor. I think actually the level of understanding has increased.
Excellent. And, going forwards, I suppose you've obviously gone through a lot of change in the past year or two, but you're coming up sort of for the top of the tree, as it were. There's big changes coming in terms of Tim Rycroft's obviously stepping down from his position. There's going to be changes with Nicholas Sapphire in April next year. We're going to have a change of the chair. Does that concern any of you, or do you think there's opportunities there?
Always opportunities. Always opportunities to renew, to bring in fresh thinking, new ideas, to have another perspective on how we're operating. So I think it's part of life, isn't it? That there's a cycle in organisations. We would never want to be complacent and standing still. So this is an opportunity to take the next step forward.
Actually, I'd echo that. AHDB has been through some bad times, and it's got through them. And I think this is a real pivot point now. And actually, with this levy increase, we are starting a new phase of the AHDB where we're going out forward with this levy payer focus, hopefully with more resources. And so I think, it's right that that's a time when some of the personalities might change as well. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's all stepping forward into the future.
I personally, I see it as an evolution. Look, beef and lamb specifically, but the farming industry in general, it's always evolving. But we are at a very pivotal point now for agriculture with BPS being removed. There's a lot more competition for land. There's a lot more opportunities to do different things with land. It's not just all about food production. We've all got to evolve, and we've all got to change. I think the really important thing is we need to have a vision for the future, and we've got to invest in it, because no business ever got great by standing still. It's not that long ago that people thought that Kodak cameras was a wonderful business, but they didn't change digital. They're gone. So we've got to evolve as levy payers evolve, as the industry evolves. It's just part of the process. We're going to always be changing now.
I'll just back up the other sector council members. I believe that change is inevitable in any business. The CEO and the chairman are both coming up to be changed. I don't see that's a problem whatsoever, because the sectors are very, very strong. The people working within those sectors, there are some fantastically talented people in every sector. And those sectors will still carry on doing what they're doing now. And I don't believe there's any issue whatsoever where we can't just keep going.
I'd just like to pick up on Lyndon's point there and continue it, that he's right to identify the people who we have within AHDB working across all the disciplines, whether it's science or marketing or finance or whatever it is. I'm constantly delighted by the people I come across within the organisation, hear about what they do. I heard this morning about some of the work we do in our particularly in our beef and lamb export markets from an expert in his field, and it was absolutely uplifting. We've got some great people in the organisation.
Yeah, I can back that up. I've just been out in Cologne at Anuga, and the people that we've got in the teams that work for us, and it wasn't just the export team that was there. There was some people from the engagement teams, there was people from the comms teams. They're absolutely fabulous, and they are held in high regard by people in the industry. And I think that's really important. AHDB, it's a service delivery business, and that's provided by people. And, the greatest asset that we have at AHDB is the people that we have. We've got to fund them properly. We've got to put resource behind them. And if we do that, there's no looking back. We've got to be bold, and we've got to go forward, because we've got the people to do it. We're just asking for a little bit more resource to do it.
Lyndon, I see that you're back. I think Mike and Colin have both picked up on your point you were making, but I'll let you finish your thoughts. I think you were telling us about how you've got to keep going forward.
Well, that's right. I'm very passionate about the dairy sector, and I actually came into being chair. I applied for the role because I was really worried about the future of AHDB's dairy sector. And I thought I'd rather be within than outside and create something that is fit for the future. And I believe that it is fit for the future. We've got the right people in the right places, and we really are starting to make a difference now for the benefit of our levy payers.
And obviously, you're going to be judged on results, as we always are. How are you going to be demonstrating, that you have, presuming that the levy rates go up, that you have taken it and ran with it?
I think that I've had a lot of consultation with farmer levy payers, with the farming unions, and with other bodies representing dairy farming, and they can all see why we need an increase, and we've had fantastic support from them, and continuing to get support. And without that increase, we will not be able to do the best job for the industry going forward. And I think everybody wants us to be able to do the very best job we can do for the future of our industries. And that's why I believe that this is the right time to put the levy rates up. In my sector, it's 24 years since the levy rates went up. That's a ridiculously long time not to have things moving, especially when there are so many new things happening, like marketing, like exports, that didn't happen then. So the industry has evolved and changed, and now we need to put the funding in place to enable that to continue to evolve and change for the benefit of farmers.
I've got complete faith and belief that we will increasingly deliver more and more value for the levy that we have entrusted to us by levy payers. And how we will do that is we will be increasingly transparent. We've become far more transparent over the last few years about what we do and where the money goes and how we make our decisions. We'll become increasingly frequent in consulting with our levy payers about exactly what their priorities are and where they want us to invest the levy on their behalf. And I think that openness about what we're doing and openness about where the money goes and where the value is coming from will stand us in good stead with our levy payers in the future.
For cereals and oilseeds, we are already consulting about how to improve the recommended list, for example, so that actually it's more relevant to farmers, and they will see that those changes with or without a levy increase. Obviously, with an increase, we can do even more of those changes and more trials, different soil types and regional analysis, so to make it more relevant to them. So they will see the results, and we will be taking feedback on that. But the biggest chunk of the extra money we want to invest is in independent research. £1 million a year extra for cereals and oilseeds. That we used to spend 12 years ago, our budget for independent research was £2.5 million a year. Last year, it was £600,000. So we've had a 75% cut in what we can provide in terms of research for our levy payers. We're going to increase the budget. It can't take us all the way back to where we were in 2012, but that extra £1 million we're going to have directed by levy payers themselves. So we're going to have them telling us what they want us to research, and we're going to have various channels where they can do that. We're going to re-establish our research subcommittee that will drive those things. So even before you get to the results stage, even what we're going to do is going to be driven by levy payers and what they need in their businesses. So that it's a whole new mentality for us.
And I suppose just to wrap up now, guys, I've just wanted to go around and give you all an opportunity to maybe do a little bit of a pitch and tell people why you think they should be backing the levy increase. Shall we start with you, Colin?
I mean, for me, it's all about opportunity. When we talk about those measures of success, the ultimate judge of success will be, levy payers. They'll be the ones that judge us about how successful, we have or haven't been in terms of bringing value back to their businesses. But there's an awful lot of opportunities out there in the world, and there's an awful lot of threats. We need an organisation that represents farmers' interests in an independent way, that isn't beholden to any one particular interest group, that does it for everybody, that does the things that they can't do, that enables them to actually grasp those opportunities. And one of the reasons that I got involved about AHDB is I thought if I can help bring value back to farmers, that then gives them choices as to how they actually live their lives. So if you can deliver back, and they may never ever know that it's anything to do with AHDB, But if you can put an extra 2, 3, maybe even £5,000 into their business, that can really change the way that people live their lives. So really, that's my driving force. There's a lot of opportunities out there. This is a great return on investment, the levy. I'd love people to get more involved and actually understand more about what we do. But the important thing is we've got to invest in ourselves, because absolutely nobody is going to come and do it for us. We've got to do it ourselves, and we've got to back ourselves.
And Mike, do you want to give us your pick?
I think everyone involved in the pork sector knows that the pork sector worldwide, not just in Europe but worldwide, is unbelievably competitive and getting more and more competitive. And so everything that we at AHDB can do to assist those involved in the pork sector to build their competitive position and build their businesses has got to be a good thing. And that's what we're determined to do. And one of the things is our levy payers are aware that this is new, that we are now able to include a British message in our promotional work and in our marketing work. This is a great step forward that has been largely assisted by the AHDB team to make that happen. We want to take advantage of that. We want to take advantage of the ability to promote British, and the additional levy funds will enable us to do that.
And Lyndon?
I believe that our levy payers need to have an independent body representing their interests, because without that, we become at the mercy of all other organisations who have got their own interests at heart. And certainly from a meat and dairy point of view, the last thing that our farmers need is to allow those organisations that want to distort the message on how good and healthy our products are to our consumers. We've got to be taking a lead here and actually representing farmers for their own futures.
And Tom?
I echo all of that. The farmers need an organisation which is on their side, which is for them. And the best way to do that is if we can fund it ourselves through the levy, and everyone contributes. Now, current grain prices, the wheat levy represents 0.2% of the value of a ton of grain. Now, that is, I think, already exceptionally good value. I have to say, without a levy increase, we will have to cut back even further on some of our existing services. So we need a levy increase, not only just to keep going, but actually then to do more, because the challenges we face are greater and they're going to get bigger than they ever have been. And as Mike says, we're in a world environment here, especially with cereals. It's a global market. There are countries like Australia and New Zealand that have no subsidies and they're very efficient. Do you know what the levy represents in New Zealand? It's 0.9% per tonne of grain. In Australia, it's over 1%. In Ireland, they don't have a levy. They have a board much like ours, which is funded through the taxpayer. But their budget for the whole of the agricultural sector in Ireland is 4 times the size of what we have for the whole of the UK in the AHDB. Our levy payers are missing out. We need to pay more to get more, and we need more than ever before.
Thank you very much for that, guys. That's been really illuminating, and hopefully you've had the opportunity to get your point across.